Oh, now it's recording. Way to go.
Apologize for the late start. We had some technical difficulties. But I hereby call this joint city council workshop with the planning commission meeting to order. We'll stand and do flag salute the pledge of allegiance. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have our entire city council, 7 members present. How about the planning commission? Do we have everybody present?
No, we're missing one.
Chairperson.
Yeah, Zach Parisi's not.
Zach Parisi
He's
is
sick.
absent, so I think we're still good with the form for that.
Yep.
So we'll go right to the strategic planning.
Cool. All right, we have Matt Hasty here from MIG, and he has a PowerPoint, right? That you'll do a pretty quick presentation. So Matt, it's you.
All right, thank you. So yes, I will share a pretty short PowerPoint presentation and just walk briefly through some of the highlights of the information that we sent you all in advance of the meeting. It's just 8 or 9 slides. Can you all see that okay on your screens?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. We have been, when I say we, really, I mean city staff, and with some support from us at MIG, have been working on talking to the community or hearing from the community, really, about what they think is important for the future of the community. And so we've been doing a number of things to try to hear from people. So we've been putting together materials, put together just a set of kind of logos and branding information for this project, but also to support some of the other planning efforts you're working on. So there's sort of a consistent look and feel to things. And when people see these things, they kind of recognize them as part of a holistic planning process. Put together some information and outreach materials, including information to encourage folks to participate in a community survey. I'll say that included a mailer that went out, a postcard that went out to everybody in the community, all the mailing addresses and the zip code for Boardman there. City staff went to a number of different events to give people information about this survey as well and encourage them to take part in it. And you see kind of the list there: the Harvest Fest, football game, Veterans Assembly, Senior Center breakfast, and youth activities in classrooms. So a lot of work to just try to let people know this survey was out there, encourage them to take it. This is our 3rd meeting with the council. And I think the last meeting was also a joint work session to talk to you about what we've been doing and what we've been hearing. And as I said, a lot of the information that we're going to present is based on the results of this community survey. So I'll say more about that kind of on the next slide here. So we did this in a couple of different ways. One, there was an online survey just for generally community members and a lot of promotion of that survey. And then there was a separate survey specifically aimed at high school students, asked some of the same questions, just ask them in a slightly different way to try to just be more kind of in tune with what students might find important and value. And then there was also an in-class activity conducted in a number of elementary school classrooms. So in total, from these 3 different efforts, we heard from over 400 people. 178 folks participated in that community survey. We had 68 high school students participate in the survey that was specifically for them, and 163 kids participated in those elementary school activities. So pretty awesome from my perspective, especially just the number and kind of percentage of kids and young people who participated in these efforts, because really they're the long-term future of your community. So that was really great to see. Just a little bit of information about kind of who participated and responded. Most of the folks who responded live in Boardman, about over 90%. Over half of them also work in Boardman. Quite a few people, but a little less than half, I guess, have lived in Boardman for quite a while, over 20 years. I would say pretty even representation of respondents over different age groups. So that was good to see. It's always good to see the kind of the demographics represent the different ages of people in the community. And a decent number had not previously participated in a community meeting or a community survey prior to this, about 20%. So it's just good to see folks, you know, who maybe haven't normally participated in these activities doing that as part of this. And then we asked people if they speak Spanish in their home, trying to get a sense of, you know, what percentage of folks are Latino residents there. And that was about 19%. So that's probably underrepresenting that population in Boardman. But I would say for particularly responding to an online survey, that's not bad results. You know, that represents quite a few folks who did participate in this survey. So that's a little bit of a snapshot of who participated. And then what we prepared a summary of the survey that identified, you know, how did people respond to the different questions we asked. The questions we asked were all kind of open-ended questions. So people told us what was important to them, about what they like about Boardman, what's special to them about Boardman, but also what's missing. And then what types of things do they want to see in Boardman in the future? So those were the types of questions we asked. We also asked them specifically about different types of housing that they think are needed in the community. So there's a lot of pages of individual responses. We did our best to summarize sort of the key themes from those responses and then use that information to draft, I will say, a fairly brief set of goals, 5 goals, and then a few kind of strategies or actions the city can undertake moving forward to help achieve those goals. And then in each case, we also talked about more specific planning efforts y'all are going through right now or will be going through in the next kind of year plus that are related to those goals and related to coming up with some with a sort of a larger number or range of strategies or actions to help implement the goals. So I'm going to just walk through each of those goals and some of these examples of strategies, and then I'm going to stop and see what y'all have to say, see if you think we're on the right track here in terms of what we've drafted so far, see what y'all think might be missing from this list. So that's kind of what these next 5 slides are about. So the first goal is about expanding shopping and service opportunities. You know, one of the things we heard from people was there are some things that they'd like to be able to do or get or have in Boardman that they can't do now and that they have to go elsewhere for. So fuller range of shopping opportunities, restaurants, places to meet their day-to-day needs. Now, I will say some of those things are maybe beyond what the size of Boardman can support now. And so one of the things I think that you all can do, and this will happen as part of the upcoming or the ongoing economic opportunities analysis work you're doing, is to understand, you know, what is the relative market for the types of services people are looking for in Boardman. So what do people want? What's the relative market for those services? And then how can you support local business owners in creating businesses that meet those needs and expanding businesses or simply retaining businesses that are providing those types of services? So that's kind of that first goal and first set of strategies. And again, there will be more information that comes out of that economic opportunities analysis that informs how to achieve that goal. So that's the first one. Second one has to do with housing. Again, we asked people what types of housing are most needed or important, or do you think people need to have in Boardman? And so about 3/4 said kind of traditional standalone houses, but there were a quarter or more that talked about other types of housing, so they talked about apartments or duplexes or townhomes or developments where you've got kind of a mix of housing and shops and services. They also talked about the need for rent to own options and housing for multiple generations, so multi-generational housing. So the city of Boardman and cities don't typically build housing themselves, but they can sort of help create the conditions where different types of housing can be built. So again, you've got an upcoming study called the Housing Needs Analysis, and you also are working on an update to your development code that will help do those things, help sort of set the stage and help provide opportunities to build different types of housing. So kind of a few strategies here. First, as part of those efforts, figure out more specifically what types of housing are needed. Make sure you've got enough land and that land is zoned in the right way to allow for those types of housing to be built or developed. And make sure that your code isn't sort of acting as a barrier to developing types of housing that are needed there. And then, work with housing developers and builders to support projects that are meeting those needs and that are consistent with what you've identified as types of needed housing. And then cities can implement some strategies to reduce the cost and increase the supply of housing. And again, those are things that housing needs analysis will get into some more detail about. The next goal says support modest sustainable growth while retaining the city's small town feel. So, when we ask people, what do you like about Boardman? What's special about Boardman? A lot of people did say we like how connected people are to each other in this community. We like the size and feel of Boardman. And so there's a little bit of push and pull between that and wanting services that may require a certain amount of growth. And there were folks who said, a certain amount of growth is okay. There are benefits or values in a certain amount of growth and in diversifying the community. So they mentioned that as well. So some of the things that we talked about here in terms of meeting kind of these dual needs or this dual objective. One, just, as you grow or as you maintain your city, design neighborhoods and support events that do help foster that sense of connectedness, continue to do all of the community events that you're doing there and think about others. Support employment growth at a sustainable level. So you're not all of a sudden, growing super fast, but you're continuing to have a sustainable level of growth. Maintaining existing places where people can get together and spend time with each other, create new ones within parks or shopping areas. And then, when you're sort of talking to folks about, hey, what's great about Boardman, talk about people's sense of community connectedness in there and think about that as you're talking to potential new residents or businesses. There's a few different planning efforts you're working on where you can sort of dig into more details of this, your parks master plan, the update to your transportation system plan, and your comprehensive plan update. So those are all kind of opportunities to come up with some more detailed strategies around this one. Number 4, we heard from people that maintaining infrastructure and addressing things like traffic, particularly if you are growing, are really important to people. So providing adequate public facilities and services is another, we thought, key goal for the community based on what we heard in the survey. So again, you're working on that transportation system plan to plan for adequate transportation facilities. You want to make sure that your water, your sewer, your stormwater, and other facilities can meet future needs cost effectively. You want to make sure you're applying fees and you're coming up with funding sources that do that in an equitable manner, and that you're leveraging resources from other places, from the region, from the state, from the federal government. So that's another goal. And then the last goal on here talks about building on natural resources and other community assets. So when we asked about, again, what makes Boardman special, one of the things people talked about is just proximity and access to the Columbia River. That's something that a lot of communities in Oregon don't have. So that's important. So the river, the Marina Park, the Heritage Trail, those are all important assets for you. And so some of the strategies we identified here around that were continue to maintain and improve the Marina Park, improve connections to the river from other parts of the community, support businesses that are generating opportunities for that river access and also helping, support economic growth there. And then another to create a set of park blocks or trail within the BPA power line rights of way. And these are all things that we would anticipate you'll be looking at as part of your Parks Master Plan planning process. So that's an opportunity again to kind of expand this list and think about how you do some of those things in a little more detail than what we identified here. So that's kind of what we came up with based on the results of the community survey. This was not intended to kind of answer every question about the future of Boardman, but to provide kind of some broad strategic guidance as you continue to go through these other planning processes and just kind of lay a foundation to help guide those efforts and your efforts moving forward. So that was a lot of talking by me. I will stop talking and would just love to hear what y'all have to say about, anything missing. Is this on the right track? Does it, if you've read through all those survey responses, does it resonate with you? So yeah, those are some of my questions. And
All right, so it's open for discussion.
Yep.
If you have any comments or questions, feel free to speak up.
Okay, I'm gonna make a comment. Can you believe it or not? Anyway, I think that a lot of the shopping business is we have to be committed as a community to support the local businesses that are local. Okay, I'm gonna go in the old times. When I first moved here, in the Napa store, there was a flower shop, a beauty shop, and a clothing store. We've had more than one clothing store in the 45 or 50 years. And when people decide, I don't want to buy those jeans that you're wearing, that the jeans at Walmart are going to be so much better, you're never going to get your shopping base to grow. And so that's just the comment I have about it. We're not committed to really supporting our local businesses. You'll be just like we are, just grinding our wheels. Because they do studies.
I think the other thing we think about too is picking and choosing, what kind of businesses you bring in. Like, we talked about, months ago was tire shop. And then something that's really needed here, and then that got kind of just, we're not gonna do that now. That was something that I think really needed to happen, and we kind of squashed it. And so we need to probably look at that too. I understand as a business owner, like, don't want to bring in a bunch of the same businesses, but at the same time, it's like let's bring in things that we actually do need.
No.
Well, I don't. Oh, let me leave
So
one.
just a second. Mr. Unfortunately, the audience doesn't get to input on work sessions. Sorry.
Just a question that I had, Matt, on the slide where it was talking about housing. And you have the word bubble, the ones that populate. One of the bigger words on there was none, and I was just wondering if that was a response that commonly came up as far as like none, or what that was in reference to.
I think I would have to that's a really good question. And you're right, that word is sort of big there. And I'm guessing that there were a certain number of folks who said, we have the types of housing we need here and we don't need other types of housing or something along those lines. But that's my guess, but I would want to go back and kind of scroll through because we had a lot of individual responses and see, what that was talking about. And it could have been related to, you know, a number of things that those word bubbles I think are useful in terms of seeing what words come up most often in the responses, but they don't tell you exactly how they were being used or what the context was. So um, I can do that as a follow-up to this meeting. I don't want to, because I think it'd take me a little bit of time, but I'm happy to do that. Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have a better answer about that one.
Thank you. Yeah, because it could be in reference to if it was asking for input on what type of housing and they put none. And then if it combined it, but when you put it up on the screen like that, I just thought it's coming across as though several people must have said none as far as like
Yeah,
housing.
the word definitely appeared a fair number of times, or it wouldn't have come up that large. Yeah.
Or it might have been, there's none really available.
Right, or not, you know.
It could have, yeah, it could have been that. Yeah, I'm not seeing what I need available. There's none available of what I want. And that was one of the things we heard from people, was just kind of, to some degree, not finding the type of housing they needed, no housing in the price range I need, or exactly the type of housing I want. So I think that's a good one for us to kind of dig back into a little bit. So happy to do that afterwards.
Any other questions or discussion?
I think we also need to have businesses that meet the needs of the current demographic. We are going to have a lot of Hispanic restaurants. That's just the way it is, because there's a lot of desire there. But in that same train of thought, the businesses that are here, to your comment, Karen, the businesses that are here also have to be competitive somewhat to those larger facilities like Walmart and Costco and everything like that. And I think that some of the businesses here find it difficult to do that. And that's understandable because of the supply chains and everything like that. But I'll tell you one thing, when we have a community that is strapped for cash, and there's a lot of people that are strapped for cash right now in this community, when you have that, they're going to go to the cheapest price. Even if they have to drive a little ways to go.
And I
I don't know that it's as much the cost, because when I think about going to Hermiston, I think about what it's gonna cost me to get there also.
Right.
And back, especially on days like today, but excuse me, it's a lot to do with choices. I mean, like, obviously Walmart has a huge inventory, right? We can't support a store like that. And I think that's something that we're just gonna have to deal with. There's no way to fix that. I mean, we're not gonna put a store in that big, it wouldn't support itself, obviously. But I think if people are thinking about going to Hermiston just because eggs are $13 for 18 instead of 15 here, you gotta think about the cost to go there and come back, unless you like going down the freeway.
I'm, to your point, I think that's a big thing, you know. I've tried to purchase clothes here, tried to purchase shoes here, purchase flowers here, but by and large, those little stores don't maybe carry my size or don't carry what I would want. And by default, then they're not really for me. And I have to go outside, and nothing competes with it getting delivered to my door.
That's what I was gonna say online, you know, for box stores. Online shopping is really killing those stores.
And it's probably a drain on everybody.
And that is.
I do think though that in a town this size, we tried one time, a number of years ago, to put in a plug for, say, a part-time DMV office. And I think that we are growing to a size where we might need to pursue that again, go back out to DMV and say, we need a little DMV right here, once a week, twice a week. You just send a couple of your workers down here and you open it up and we do DMV and Boardman. Maybe we have maybe it could be, maybe we could set up an office at City Hall or something that they could access, just come and use once a week. I don't know, spitballing ideas. But those are the kinds of businesses that we could start to build as well. We don't have to just be retail community, right? It might be nice to have some theme that's entertainment related. And I'm not really big on bowling, but if it had 3 lanes on one side, some little food court area in the middle and a small single movie theater on the other, it'd get business all the time. Well, I don't have anybody in mind to buy it.
Well, and I think what it comes down to, in looking at it from a development point of view, okay, it's ease of development. You have to realize it's all well and good, we talk about all these things. We talk about, you know, let's have a store that does this, or let's have a business that does this. But the development costs are very, very large for any business that goes in there. And then you add in hoops that we have to jump through as a developer with the city or anything like that. That is going to be a challenge. It's just the way it is. Now, a lot of small towns are the same way. But the less hoops that a developer has to jump through, the more developers are gonna come here. The more incentives the developers have to come here, the more people that are gonna develop. And that's just across the board. And I've seen that with other cities as well. It's, I mean, for me personally, I have moved a lot of my development elsewhere because it's so difficult to do it here. So.
What makes it difficult to do it here?
It's in the past, and it's not been so much with Carla, and I'm just like a statement here, but in the past, it's been a no, no, no. Rather than a, let's see how we can make it work. And so for me personally, being a small business owner, those no, no, no's cost me money. And every time I have to go through a city council or a planning commission or the multitude of permits that we have to do, whatever it is, those are all deterrents. Now, if we do need to have permits, we do need to have codes, we do need to make sure everything is done to a good standard. But there needs to be less, in my opinion, there needs to be less obstacles to help developers.
Do other cities operate differently than we do in regards to that? They do?
Is it
Because they have a lack of standards or?
No, because it's more amenable to mold to what developers want. So that for example, this is just, I'm gonna make up something. Let's say, for example, we want to put a fourplex or an eightplex where there's commercial property. Okay, well, the developer has that commercial property, he's already purchased it, that's what he wants to do with it. Well, do we want to wait 10 years for somebody to actually put something commercial there? Or do we want to put what the developer is offering? And in other small towns, they're like, yeah, bring it on, let's do it. Whereas I've met with difficulty here in Boardman that no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. We want that specifically for this and the property continues to sit there and sit there and sit there and sit there. Whereas it could have been developed at least. So, and that's just that's just one facet of a huge multitude of different reasons, so.
So can I ask, are you comparing Oregon to Idaho?
In aspect, but I've done business in Utah as well. And Utah is very much the same way.
Okay, because I don't know about Utah, but I do know about Idaho.
I know it's easy. I know it's very easy.
Yes, yes, it really is easy. Because yes, so I don't think you can compare just because of the dynamics of the state.
Well, and this is not just me, Ken.
Oh, no,
I've spoken to many developers.
I
and
understand
they
all about. No, I agree.
But it might not be something that's in our purview to adjust if it's state.
It might not, but I'm just telling you that those are obstacles that exist.
And I would say based on just recent things that we've come across as well, I do agree with you in that sometimes it is, people have a vision for what they want. And, you know, I think I said this in some of our meetings where like, you can have a vision for how you want things, but that doesn't mean it's gonna stay, right? Like things can change. Once somebody develops something, they can sell it and then they can turn it into something else as long as it's within the codes. And so I think sometimes people get too tied up in how they want the town to look, right? That then developers are like, I don't.
And it's understandable. I mean, it's totally understandable.
Yeah.
We have our certain idea of what we
Right.
want our town to look like. But what I'm saying, that is just one obstacle of many that we're putting in front of those developers, so that otherwise they could come here and would come here, they don't.
Well, I think sometimes too, some developers, they expect too much. They want everything given to them or handed to them, and then that, and they try to make demands, and this is the only way I'm gonna do it, and that's that. And sometimes it's not fair because they try to take advantage, or they, they don't have everybody in mind, and then in the same token, some people are just like, well, this is what I want, and that's the way it is, and I will try my best to keep everything else from happening. I mean, we definitely have an element of that in our town too.
Did we have another part that we need to talk to?
No, it's me. Hey, Matt, can you pull up the slide that has the 5 goals on it, just the
Page 3.
perfect one
And I kind
liners?
of wanted to talk about the transportation side. There was a concern for infrastructure and those kinds of things. And just the idea that we are working on the transportation, but I think that it was highlighted to me today, trying to get across the freeway. That how much, right, like a smart person would have done that. I don't know where I would be.
But there were road construction going on today too, that made it even worse.
That's what they.
Yeah.
That was the problem. That's the problem. That is the problem. But I think what I was noticing was that while we were getting the traffic off the freeway, so we didn't have a catastrophic event. Traffic was backing up in both directions on North and South Main, and traffic was backed up to the grocery store and beyond.
Yeah.
And traffic was backed up almost to the viaduct for the railroad tracks. So it's not like, and plus every arterial was backed up 6 cars as well. And I was thinking, I don't know how anyone could honestly say we don't need a traffic control device in this region.
Right, but when they're doing what they were doing, you're not going to avoid it. There's
No,
absolutely no way,
I'm just
especially when they're
saying
working
there's
on
a
the bridge.
lot of vehicle traffic there.
Huh?
I-
It's
Yeah.
at night.
Well, if you stop it for several minutes at a time, yes, of course.
Well, how are you gonna move the 40 vehicles on either side?
Well, I'm just-
Backing up the freeway.
I'm just saying, like, that is not a normal circumstance, like.
But that is the normal amount of traffic on that freeway, off of the freeway? You don't think so? I absolutely think that's.
I look out the window 8 hours a day. And I see right onto the freeway. It's not at that.
Right, why don't we
It's
do
not as bad.
construction at night to where it's not backing us up during the day?
I'm not
Because
here
we
to
don't
debate
have that
there.
much traffic in the evenings like we
Yeah.
do during the day.
I was just trying to say, it feels like there's a lot of traffic. And it's, maybe there is more warrant for something.
No, yeah. And those are good points. So the one thought that, again, since we're all here, to walk away, the goal is, as the council, to adopt this strategic plan. Do these 5 goals match what you think you would like to work on as a council? That is the ultimate thing to do, and we will not say that today, but that is the end goal. And if you look on the goal 1, that goes directly with our EOA. Our EOA will be done when, Carla?
Summer, by end of summer.
So in the summer, we will have very specific plans connected to businesses. The housing, that is directly related to the program we're doing right there that you guys have selected a committee for. The sustainable growth, the number 3, it connected with the TSP, the parks, and
The EOA comes next to all of them.
Yeah, goal 4, we're actually working on it specifically, it's not listed, but our standards, what's that called, Mike?
Our public works standards.
Thank you, public works standards, that goes along with that, and then goal 5 goes along with parks. So, and all of these are gonna be done by, like, all of our plans.
Everything that, other than the housing needs analysis, because we're held up by the state,
Yeah, we can't do that.
we will have done by the spring of 26.
So that is way cool that, so we have those 4 plans that will feed and give very specific information of going forward. And that will give, like Matt was saying, that this isn't the nuts and bolts of it, but through those plans, we will have nuts and bolts. we will be able to go into our CIP and say, oh yeah, this thing, we're gonna work on it in 2017. So the concept is to be able to walk away at some point and say, yeah, these are the 5 goals we want to do as a city. How we do it, it is gonna take time, those plans are coming, but in theory, did those sound good? And that's for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously that it represents the community's vision or what have you. It comes right from the surveys. Yeah.
So,
I think it's a direction that's worth looking at and trying to achieve.
Does it need to be in that order? Is that what we're talking
this,
about?
that is,
I don't think it's in order.
it is not.
Okay.
It's not in order. It's
I
not
wouldn't
like,
take it as an order.
yes, it
It
is.
says it over there, Richard, but we're in older, we can't see it. Wait.
Oh, yeah, I can barely see it.
It's not, Matt, can you just go to goal 1? Just the next slide. Or wherever that, okay, so where it says strategies include, they have those 3 bullets, that is not like set in stone. But some of those will be more connected after our EOA plan is done. There's gonna be real specific strategies, like the development code that we're working on, that will directly impact our pricing and what Dave is talking about with, you know, codes and policies and what we have to do. We're totally revamping our development code. So those strategies will be more enhanced, but I mean, if you guys like the concept of the 5, those 5 sound good, then we will present that to the council probably in March for like an absolute, like, yes, this is our goal.
Can
This
I
is
ask
it.
one more question of Matt then? Matt, do you think there's anything in our 5 goals that, I mean, is there anything out there in the great big wide world that we might not have really touched on that with our 5 goals? Like something that's hanging out there and
Well, I mean, again, you know, we asked some pretty broad questions of folks, and we tried to come up with a set of goals that reflected what we heard back from folks. And these are pretty broad goals. And I think, sure, there are probably some things that um, I don't know that there are a lot of things that you couldn't kind of nest or talk about within the context of each of these 5 goals, or one or more of these 5 goals, because they are pretty broad. You know, they get at how people travel within and to Boardman. They get at jobs and employment. They get at the type of housing you want and the types of services you want to provide, and how as a city you're providing different types of infrastructure and public facilities and services. So they're pretty encompassing. I mean, you know, there are some things that some communities deal with that are related to like natural hazards or emergency preparedness or things like that. And that's not to say that you don't have some of those issues, but you don't have them in the same way, you know, as some places do in terms of being surrounded by wildfire prone areas or having a lot of steep slopes that cause erosion or things like that. So, you know, so I don't know that there's a lot I would say that's missing, but I mean, I think that is one of our questions for you. Like, does this seem to reflect, again, what I described and what you saw in the reports that people said in response to the survey? And you know, it's hard for me to say that anything big is missing. I don't think anything big's missing, but there might be some kind of smaller things or very specific things that probably will kind of come up and be talked about in some of these more specific planning processes that Brandon talked about and Carla talked about.
See, I like it because we got 5s, they're pretty broad. And then as we come up with ideas, I'm pretty sure we could probably find some places to plug them into to be able to make to be able to have that project in that goal. I would hate to see much more than 5. 5's pretty good. And to be able to, but that's 5 target areas that we can take what we plan and be able to put them in those areas.
I agree.
To answer Councilor Slade's question about the none So I've got the results, the responses here, and Matt, I would ask you to clarify this, but as I went through, there's an awful lot of lines that say none. So I
No.
get why none showed up. My question back to you, Matt, is did they say none or was there not an answer? That would be my question back to you with having the original surveys. Is none a representation that the respondent said, and the question was, what are some challenges that you currently face with housing, if any? So was the response none? Or was the response blank and therefore captured as none?
I think the response actually was none, like that was the word, that was the response. I don't think it was that it was blank, but I can go back and confirm that.
Yeah, so
yeah,
that would be
that's a
what I
good
would
question.
say. Yeah, it looks as though if Matt can confirm that, it does appear that, and there is a lot of nones.
Yeah,
What
and some of those I think maybe came from some of the high school survey responses as well. Again, I want to go back and look before I really, don't quote me on that, but I do recall seeing in some of the high school responses.
No, it was
the word
only
none.
community. It was only,
Was it?
that question was only community. To answer your question, Ethan, it is, what are some challenges that you currently face with housing, if any?
Right, so a lot of people, if they own a house, they're gonna write none.
Yeah.
Right?
If they're
Right.
in a house and they're fine, they're
Right.
not. trying to
So
get
it's the
out.
100, and if you go back to the first page, the number of actual community respondents was 178. 178. So out of those 178 responses, there are a lot of them that said none.
Did that.
So,
Like they don't have a housing problem.
right, they don't have
Yeah,
none. I do not have a housing problem. I think is the intent of their answer.
Possibly.
Yes.
I didn't see the survey for the grade school kids. I didn't look at the questions.
She just said that the only people who had that particular question. Community.
Or community members. So that the question that does the housing was only to the community members. It was not targeted at the high school. It was not targeted at the elementary school.
I don't know what they say. So. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, anybody else have anything? All right, this meeting is adjourned. I don't have my gavel. Hammer, I need my hammer.
Yes.